Today, we're tackling a massive question, one that's right at the core of how business works. What happens when a promise, one that's locked into a contract, just gets completely shattered by something that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming?
All right, let's just get right into it. You know the saying, a deal is a deal, right? A signed contract is supposed to be this ironclad thing, totally unbreakable. But what happens when the world throws a massive curveball, like a war starts or government just orders everything to shut down? What happens to that so-called deal then?
So, to really get how a contract can break, we first have to understand what makes it so strong in the first place. The whole idea that a contract is sacred. Think about it. Contracts really are the engine of our entire economy. At their heart, they're just a bunch of promises, right? A promise to deliver something, a promise to pay for it, a promise to get the job done. But this whole system hits a major stress test when some huge external event makes keeping that promise literally impossible. It's the ultimate showdown between your obligation and what's happening in reality. And that showdown brings us to a really cool legal concept that was basically designed for these exact situations. It's time to decode force majeure. Okay, so force majeure sounds fancy, right? It's French for superior force. And the definition here, which comes from the CMS legal guide, is super specific. It's not just any old problem. It has to be external, something totally outside the contract. It has to be extraordinary, not just a regular business hiccup. And this is the real kicker. It has to be completely beyond anyone's control, making the deal impossible to fulfill. Not just harder, not just more expensive, but literally impossible. And this right here is a really, really important distinction to make. On the left, you've got the big, catastrophic stuff. War, massive strikes, governments blocking things. These are the kinds of huge events we're talking about. But look at the right side. This is what's considered just a normal business risk. Your costs go up, tariffs change, your company's having a tough time financially. Sorry, but that's not force majeure. In this quote from the CMS guide just nails the legal thinking behind all this. It's so clear. If you agree to sell something at a fixed price, you're the one taking on the risk that your costs might go up. The courts are really hesitant to let someone wiggle out of a contract just because it ended up being a bad deal for them. The bar for proving force majeure is incredibly high. So that's all the theory. Now, let's see how this stuff actually plays out in the real world with a pretty dramatic case study, the sudden shutdown of the Leviathan gas field. So our story here is about Ratio Energies. They're a huge partner in this gigantic offshore gas project, and they've got massive long-term contracts to produce and sell natural gas to customers all over the place. I mean, their entire business model is built on keeping those promises. And then this happens. Just look at this timeline from their official financial report. On June 13th, a military operation kicks off, and on the very same day, the government drops a bombshell order on Chevron, the operator. Shut it all down. Shut down the entire Leviathan platform. And just like that, the gas stops flowing. For 12 whole days, this massive critical piece of energy infrastructure just goes dark. Nothing. Until a ceasefire finally lets them turn the taps back on. And the financial damage? Whoa. It was fast and it was big. That shutdown was a huge reason why Ratio Energies' revenue for that quarter plummeted by a staggering 35% compared to the year before. I mean, it's pretty simple. You can't sell gas if the government has legally forbidden you from producing it. So here's the million-dollar question. What did they do? And right here in their own report, they tell us. The project partners officially invoked the force majeure clause. They sent out notices to their customers basically saying, hey, we can't deliver the gas we promised because something extraordinary and completely out of our control just happened. A military operation and a direct government order. This is a perfect textbook example of the concept in action. An event like this never just happens in a bubble. A single government order in one part of the world can send shockwaves through the entire global trade system. So let's take a look at that ripple effect. When a region like the Persian Gulf, which is basically a superhighway for global energy and shipping, suddenly turns into a high-risk zone, the whole logistics network just tenses up. This map from a shipping insurance report really shows you just how central and critical this waterway is to everything. For the shipping industry, the consequences hit almost instantly. As that guard report lays out, insurance companies start canceling war risk policies, or the premiums just go through the roof. Ports that were perfectly safe yesterday are suddenly declared unsafe. Ship owners can actually start legally refusing to sail into the area, thanks to special clauses in their contracts. And maybe the scariest part, the risk of a ship getting trapped inside a conflict zone becomes very, very real.
Okay, so this all brings us to our final and maybe most important question. In a world that's so full of disruptions, how can any business actually prepare for the things you just can't see coming? The big takeaway here is actually pretty simple, but it's also profound. In the world we live in today, which is pretty volatile, you can't just rely on standard boilerplate contracts anymore. It just doesn't work. The old way of doing things isn't tough enough for the challenges we're all facing now. So what's the solution here? How do you prepare? Well, the CMS Legal Guide actually gives us a pretty clear roadmap for making contracts smarter and tougher. First up, get specific. Don't just have a vague force majeure line. Spell it out. List things like pandemics or new import rules. Step 2 is about pricing. You need to build in ways to adjust prices if big regulations change. Then, step 3, you got to add what are called hardship clauses. These basically force everyone back to the table to renegotiate if the whole deal just stops making sense economically. And finally, especially for those really long-term contracts, you need to build in more flexible ways to get out of the deal if you have to. It's all about baking that adaptability right into the DNA of the contract itself.
And all of this really leaves us with one last big question to chew on. As we try to navigate a world that's just full of constant shocks, from wars to supply chain meltdowns and everything in between, can any promise, can any contract ever be truly future-proof? Or is the best we can do just to build in the tools to adapt when the next promise inevitably breaks?